welcome to Conversations with Miss T, and that is me. Today we are having a conversation with Bongani Mabuza. Bongani is a founder at Puzzle Shop Tours in Katahong and also a CEO at African Accent Brands. All right, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy. I am very nervous about this because this is the first time that I am talking to somebody that I don't really have like a friendship with. Everybody that I've talked to, it's somebody that I know in person, and I've known them for a while. So that's why I'm a bit nervous about our conversation.
I thought you knew me. No, I'm playing.
We're Facebook friends, right? But I don't know where I know you from.
I also don't. One of us sent the other one a friend request.
I think it was you. You probably sent me a friend request.
Oh, it had to be me. No ways. I don't friend request strangers. We probably went to the same school or something. I don't
know. Germiston High?
Yes.
When did you matriculate?
Earlier than you. It was like 2002.
Whoa. 2010. I matriculated 2010.
No, I didn't say 2010. I said 2002.
No, I heard you. I'm telling you that I matriculated 2010. So those, oh wow, it's interesting.
That's weird.
Okay, cool. So how was Germiston like for you when you were still in high school?
I think it was transitioning, like because I would have been there like in 1998. My grade 8 year would have been 1998, meaning that the country was like 4 years out of like apartheid. So it was transitioning. It was transitioning from old white Germiston High to multiracial Germiston High. So the dynamics were very interesting because, well, interesting now that I'm older, because there was a lot of subtle racism. There was a lot of so I'm assuming by the time you were there probably were no white people, right?
I think we had about two. Now that you mention it, yeah, we had about two. It was Tina and this other guy. I think Morgan is his name. I don't quite remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my case, there was a lot. There was like an even split, and then you'd see it like especially like with the matriculants at the time. There were a lot of white guys, So we had this, what you would call bullying now. We normalized it in my era, like where, it was normal to be bullied by older people, like, so we had something called like a wedgie. So, you like somebody would like drag your underpants out of your pants.
Right.
Now I don't think you could do that. But no. in my age, like a wedgie was like a thing, and it was normal. Like you couldn't even report it to the teachers or tell your parents, because I guess you'd be so embarrassed that something like that happened to you. But that's like your first experience of like being initiated into high school. So as a new person or a newbie in a high school setup, you assume that that's the culture. And you perpetuate the culture as you get older. But now it's like it's bullying, it's sexual harassment, it's all kinds of things. Yeah. So I think I come from that era where Germiston High was transitioning.
Who was the principal then?
Yeah. George Lalaika.
Oh, okay. Because I had Mr. Biekas. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, he was a teacher. I think he was a math teacher when I was there.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't even a principal. Yeah. Yeah. He taught me. He taught me, I think, maths. Yeah, I think
How
so.
was he? How was he like as a teacher? I cannot imagine Mr. Pickers as a teacher.
He came. I think he came in my grade 10, grade
Okay.
10 year. So I had been there for like 3 years already, and
Okay.
he was new. So we made fun of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
We teased him. We gave him a hard time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, because I think because he was such a manly man, like he was
Yeah.
an Afrikaner, Boere
Oh,
guy.
Afrikaans
I mean,
guy.
he
Yeah.
was tough. I mean, yeah, I was a tough guy, but we had a relationship of sorts because he then took over the soccer teams when he first arrived. So he was very into like supporting the sports teams, the soccer
Right.
teams. So he endeared himself to the students when that started happening when he became like a sports guy. But other than that, I don't remember much about him because I
Yeah.
think he he had a group that he taught, and I wasn't in that group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually remember him as a compassionate man. And I know he was very strict. By the time I got to Jimiston High, like people were afraid of him. And I was afraid of him
Mm.
too, but this is what happened. Grade 8, 9, and 10, I was in Graceland, right? Because I couldn't get into like the former Model C schools. And then eventually, grade 10, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start applying. And I applied and I got into Jimiston High School, but I got called in for an interview first, right? So,
Yeah,
and at that time, my English was non existent. So
oh, shame.
here we were, my dad and I sitting in Mr. Biega's office. And he said to me, listen, it's rare that we would even consider accepting a student at this grade, right? Like there was, because I think I was going to start grade 11, if I'm not mistaken. And then he said, your grades are really good. Okay, so we called you in here for an interview so that you could tell me why you want to come to the school. And I didn't know what to say, but I noticed, Uguti, as we were driving into the office, remember there was a tennis court, right? And so I saw that, and I remember that I used to play tennis with my grandpa. And I said, hey, one of the reasons that I came to the school is because I want to be a tennis player. And I don't remember what other reason I gave him, but it was not
Mhm.
like he was very patient with me. I don't even know what I was saying to him. All I knew was this was a very difficult interview. I was not fluent in English at that time, but he was very patient with me.
Mhm.
I went into grade 11 and I worked hard. I had to work hard to catch up and stuff like that. And matric, I passed and got accepted into university. When I saw my matric certificate, they were waiting outside at the quad. So I saw my matric certificate. I was like, I made it into university because they had told me like, the what is it, like the minimum requirements. They said if you get this grade, then you can definitely be accepted into the University of Cape Town.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
saw
yeah.
that,
Yeah, like an
and
exception.
yeah, and then I cried. And as I was crying, I walked up to Mr. Bekas and I said, thank you for accepting me, thank you for giving me a
Oh,
chance. And of course, at that time, like, you cannot really hug, so he just gave me like that very warm handshake to say, I wish I could hug you right now, but I can't, but I feel you and we're in this together. So from that time on, I've always loved him because he gave me a chance. Me. Wow,
wow.
yeah. The
But
reason,
it wasn't so much a chance. I think that's the beautiful thing about personal experiences, right?
yeah,
For some people, it's entitlement. They wouldn't have it any other way. They would be like, I mean, I expected to get into Jamestown High because of where I was coming from, right? And it was natural. Like, so to hear it the way you are narrating it is really special because it just goes to show that some people take for granted is really, really important to other people. So
yeah.
it's interesting. You know what? I just need to grab a charge. I think my phone's gonna die. Just
Go for
two
it.
seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you just touched on entitlement, and I noticed that you also deal with some young people, right? Now, I've taught high school. I know how the entitlement thing is manifesting with the younger generation. But how has your experience been like?
In terms of working with young people?
Yeah, working with younger people, like, are you picking up this whole entitlement vibe around them? Like, how's that been for you?
Yeah, I think entitlement is everywhere. It's not just with young people. I mean, I
Okay,
think to isolate it to like a group of people is unfair.
good point.
But I mean, I see it. I saw it because before I became an entrepreneur, I used to work. So I worked in one of the retailers as a manager, and a young one at that. I think when I was like 21, I was already like managing like a retail space. So I had older people that I used to work with who were entitled because they had been there long and they had a way of doing things. And
Yeah.
so entitlement is something that you see it in like different spaces. You see it in a church, where people have a seat. I've been sitting on this seat for so many years, and they even forget the space that they're in. And then you also then see it in young people who don't know the other side of actually not being afforded the opportunity. Where I recruited a lot of kids in my area at first when I started my business. So there were a lot of young people from my area, neighbors and so on. So and so's mom would say, "Hey, can you give my son a job?" and so on. So I'd give people a check, my relatives,
Oh,
and I've been most disappointed by really close people.
Yeah.
The really, really close people who you would think are the ones that would perform are the ones that, because they feel entitled, because they haven't had to work for the opportunity, they are the most disappointing. So entitlement is really like a mindset. I wouldn't reduce it to a generation or an age group. It's a mindset where you don't know any other way of being than feeling entitled. You see it with siblings.
I am so glad you said that. Because that just opened up my mind, because I've always had this narrow perception that this is a young people's thing. But now that you mentioned that, I'm like, remembering experiences where it's like, no, actually, umkhulu kasbanibani naye.
Yeah. So it's a really broad thing, but it's a sad thing because it holds so many people back. Once you stop being entitled, then you earn, your place in the world. That's when you start working hard. That's when you push yourself. So a lot of people are with a lot of potential are really held back by their perception of the world. If you think the world owes you something, you're gonna find out it actually doesn't. So and that's usually like after you've had a few failures. But I mean, the quicker we all stop being entitled, the more progressive we can be.
You are very brave. Sorry to cut you off, but you are very brave for employing relatives. I wouldn't. I cannot work with my relatives because to them, I'm a kid and I'll always be a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I like you know why? Like, it's such a double whammy because you can't afford like other people.
Right.
At first.
I get it. Yeah.
So you try sometimes it's not even about talent, it's about manpower. So let's say you want to carry something, right? Something very heavy. You don't really need talented people. You just need a lot of people carrying that thing, right? But let's say that's your business. Your business is to carry heavy things. So you need a lot of people. So relatives are manpower at times. So and then you hope that then you can then, you know, groom people into sharing a vision, you know, thinking a certain way and so on. So if I don't employ my relatives, I think I've always felt like I've always been a relative myself. So I've always had uncles who probably were in business, never considered me, and I thought I was wonderful, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't want to be that uncle, you know. So
Yeah.
when I mean, I still employ like relatives. So for me, it's that I don't want to be that neighbor that has this huge opportunity but doesn't give the opportunity to a young person next to me. I don't want to be that uncle that doesn't give the opportunity to my nephews and nieces. I don't want to be that brother who doesn't afford my sisters an opportunity. So I've always looked at myself that way, that, you know, more than just, you know, the dynamics that have been put out, oh, relatives this, oh, neighborhood this, oh, I mean, they come through, you see it, but for me, it's always that to say, I want to tick that box where I've given you the opportunity, you've messed it up, and now I'm
it's
free.
on you. Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah,
it.
it's
Yeah.
on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just that because I'm a very observant person. Well, there's things that I'm oblivious to, but when it comes to that, I'm very oblivious. So I've seen how it backfired with my uncles. I've seen it backfire with my dad recently, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm learning. And I think the tricky thing about that is, you know, once your business relationship is is ruined, then your relativeness is also affected, you know? And then they're gonna go bitch about it to, you know, this aunt, and now this side of the family hates you and they think, oh no, yeah, but yeah, but so I think I love my
Yeah.
family so much to have to, you know, put our relationship into that test. I'm like, I've seen people do that, and I don't want it to happen with my generation. But there are people that I would work with in my family. There were people who I'm just like, I'm just waiting for you to just grow like 3 more years and we're gonna take over the world. There is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a number of those
No,
people.
but here's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Some of the most successful businesses in the world are family businesses.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting part about it, you know, that maybe it's a race thing. Maybe our race hasn't, because we don't have the history of doing business, or maybe that's why the dynamics, you know, come into play of us not being able to work with each other. But in reality, you really need people you can trust when you want to do business. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you really need a group of people around you that you can trust. And if you trust no one, it really becomes a hard journey and a hard thing to do. So I think we need to explore this family, friends dynamic, you know, more actually, and normalize it.
You just reminded me of John Maxwell was being interviewed, and he says that he is not a big fan of this notion that it gets lonely at the top. He was like, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be lonely at the
No, it
top.
shouldn't.
There are people who are supposed to be up there with you. But then I guess, you know, selecting who's up there with you is also a process, like you said. It's something that it's a journey. Yeah. Um, can you elaborate more on the fact that, you know, as Black people, because we cannot really speak for the other races, but as Black people, we are new to this whole notion of being, you know, businessmen and women and entrepreneurs and starting our own thing?
Yeah. A lot of us are first generation entrepreneurs, especially in South Africa. A lot of us come from that era where our parents used to work somewhere and went out of the township to go work outside the township, you know. So the whole idea of leaving the township and going to, you know, to the suburbs, going to the city to work is something that, you know, we've lived and experienced all our lives. And then suddenly we're free, and now we can become business men and women. And now we don't know, you know, what it takes, you know, more than just like the education of it, but the culture, the interaction, the way to deal with each other, the professionalism, the not personalizing business, you know. So there are many dynamics that we are still grappling with. We are still learning as first generation entrepreneurs that, you know, we are definitely going to make mistakes, you know, when doing this thing. The integrity of doing business, you know, the hierarchy of doing business, the knowing that, you know, we all need to rally behind a leader, rally behind a vision, you know, the whole not competing, you know, with each other, the collaborating with each other. Those are new concepts. Those are things that other cultures, other races have had hundreds of years learning and experiencing, that for us it's new. It's new. Yes, there are books. Yes, there's school. Yes, you know, we've seen some people do it successfully, but for most of us, you know, we are learning as we go. So it's like social media. There was no social media a few years ago, so we're the first generation of social media, you know, people, so to say.
Yeah.
So we're bound to make some mistakes. There are things that, you know, future generations are going to look back and go, why were you doing that? Why were you posting that? Why did you act like that? So I think it's similar with entrepreneurship, that we like the first generation of entrepreneurs, of like doing business even in certain spaces. There are spaces that we were not allowed, that were reserved for certain groups. So there's like, I'm the first filmmaker in my family. There's never anyone that has ever been a filmmaker, let alone study it or and do it or become a TV producer. So I have no reference point. So if I make mistakes, it's because there's never been anybody in that space. I'm the first you know, distributor, you know, in my family. Like, there's never been anybody who's run a logistics business. I'm the first this, I'm the first. So we are a lot of first, and we're bound to make mistakes. And I think it's the case for a lot of my peers as well, a lot of other, you know, first generation entrepreneurs. So yeah, I mean, we should be kinder to ourselves and our people. And really hope that we can make the kind of impact that could change the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Now that you mention it, I think I consider myself to be slightly blessed, in the sense that I had my uncles who who went to university, who got into, you know, the corporate world, and occupied higher seats and stuff. So I saw that, because I remember I had to go job shadow what was this, Ervat, I think that's what it's called. When I was in high school, we had like a program where we could job shadow, and I went to job shadow my uncle. So I saw him in his element, and I was like, yeah, this person from my family doing it, this is amazing, you know. So I knew it was possible for me as well. So we also had my late uncle, who was an attorney. And oh, hey, you just disappeared. Oh, you're back.
Yeah. No, it's that call thing that you spoke about. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is a person going to call again? Do you want to take the call and then come back? Yeah, I knew they would.
I think somebody's helping me with. Yeah, somebody's helping me with that. So.
Okay, somebody's going to take the call.
We'll be fine. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I was saying to you that I've seen it done, and I desperately desired to have an opportunity to talk to my late uncle, because he was such a brilliant man, right? But Naishim, he was so caught up fighting his demons that he did not really have the time to pass on the information to us, which I think is sad, you know, because we missed out on a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, a lot of help that could have, you know, benefited the family and stuff. because there is that age difference between us. So I understand where you're coming from. And I'm looking at myself going like, hey, I'm so grateful you guys went through it so that we don't have to go through, half of it. And the people behind me don't even have to go through half of it. Because I'm talking to a
Yeah,
few younger people here who are starting their own things. And I find myself
yeah.
going like, hey, don't do that. Don't make that mistake. I've made it before. Don't do it. Avoid it. And that's gonna help them, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, no. Well,
I so whenever I see African images online, and I love African culture, I love being Black, I love everything, that Africa represents. But I cannot help notice that there's like a poverty element associated with it. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's at a village, carrying a bucket of water, hey, this is Africa. And I was just wondering, do you think we'll ever move past that? Now, I know you're a designer and I know you're trying to modernize, the African culture and still keep the Africanness with it. Do you think we'll ever move past that?
I think poverty is a reality in Africa, and it being depicted in images and so on is as true as it's not. This is what I mean. If you don't show the poverty, then the assumption is that it doesn't exist, right?
Mm.
Which is not true. And showing it can create a bad image that that's all we are, and that's all we stand for, right? So it's important to kind of like as you kind of like show Africa to the world, you show a balanced view. And I don't think it's the responsibility of the world to depict us in a way that we want to be depicted.
Mm-hmm.
It's our responsibility to tell our own stories.
Yeah.
Beautiful, wonderful, creative, amazing stories. To tell those stories to the world. That's our response. It's on us. We are tasked with portraying ourselves positively to the rest of the world. But how they see us is not
Our
necessarily exactly. So when they come here and they choose to see the poverty and they choose to see the woman with the bucket with the bucket on her head, they choose to see the hungry child, they choose to see the shacks. They don't see the mansions, they don't see the cities, they don't see the creativity and the vibrancy. It's a choice. There's something called poverty porn, where people literally chase sad stories about poverty around the world, and they chase content that is about poverty. And Africa is a hub for such content. Such content for NGOs that are trying to raise money for their organizations. They can't come here and show Sentin City. They when they come here, they look for Alex. They look for the shacks in Deep Slow. They look for the poverty. They look for the mishaps, because they are here for an agenda. So you can't. It's not your responsibility to control what people's agendas are. Yours is to make sure that parallel to the negative stereotypes that are being depicted about Africa, we are creating a parallel, message, a parallel platforms that communicate the positivity of Africa. And we can do this in a lot of ways. We can do this through our films. We should stop making poverty films and TV shows and content. We could do this through our fashion, show that not everybody walks around, with torn teeth, poverty stricken. It's on us to show the vibrancy of our fashion, our look. It's for us to design homes, spaces that depict, the beauty of, our cultures and, our progress.
Mm-hmm.
So the responsibility is on us. It's not on what images people are putting out there about us. What are we doing in return?
Yeah. So I consider myself to be relatively well traveled, right? So I took this trip to go to Thailand, and we were hill trekking through villages. And I remember staying a night at one village, and it just dawned on me that because all my life it's always been like the rest of the world is richer than Africa, right? And I was like, hang on, like poverty is everywhere. It's not just in Africa, it's in Asia as well. It's in America. Not all of America is rich, you know? And I remember having a conversation with this lady. I was like, it's so amazing that our paths are crossing, in the sense that there are some African organizations that give to other continents, right? And other continents are over there trying to raise money for African villages and kids that are struggling. So our paths are like crossing like this. And I don't know if we as Africans choose not to, because the Middle East as well, there's plenty of rich and poverty there, right? Like we've seen it, people getting killed, the mass shootings and the bombs, and poor communities and stuff. But we see that and we still go like, oh, poor Africa, it's just us, but it's not, you know? So
it's because they control their narrative. They control what they focus on. They control what they want the world to perceive. So all we see about like Arab states, we see Dubai, we see the beauty, we see the lifestyle, but we they don't promote the negative stuff. And I think we do a lot of that. We because maybe somebody else talks negatively about us, and then we tend to do the same. If somebody says something negative about your township, you support it. We need to change our mindset and start looking for positives in our own spaces. But I mean, not all of us can do that, but those who can must.
It's a work in progress. We'll get there. Yes. Take me through the journey of African accent. How did that come about? You also want to tell people what African accent is?
I mean, for it's the name of my company, but for how we started. I mean, African accent for me is an expression of self-sufficiency, independence. I worked, as I mentioned before, that I worked in a corporate environment for many years. And as a young person, I already had reached like the height of my career,
Right.
And I felt like I had hit a ceiling, where there was nowhere else for me to go. And I felt that I had so much more to offer, to my community, to society at large. And the idea of African accent comes from really like the need to express my potential, the potential of people like me, the potential of where I'm from, my community, and literally like in every space. So we came up with the name African accent based on the fact that one, it's an identity. It's the one thing that you could be in America. You said you're in Taiwan, right? If I had to come across you in Taiwan, the first thing that I could connect with is your accent. Your accent tells people where you're from. It more than your skin color and any other thing. Your accent exposes you. It tells people where you're from. And for me, Africa is expressed through our accent.
Accents,
and our accent Our accent for me is so much more. Our accent is in the little, things that we do, the little things that, like our little choices, the way we perceive the world. And I wanted to create businesses that would reflect Africa, that would show a bit of Africa in everything, whether it be fashion, whether it be movies, whether it be retail, whether it be anything that we are involved in. I wanted Africa, everything we do, to have a touch of Africa, hence, African accent, because that's the one thing that if I happen to be in New York and I'm dressed a certain way, people could say, "Oh, that should be from Africa." If I make a type of film, that is an African film. So, like, Africa has lacked an identity for so long that we need to be deliberate about the things that we do. And for me, that's the kind of like business and company that I wanted to create, going into African accent. So we started this way back in 2000, and I know it's not that way back, but 2009. So we've been at it for about 11, 12 years now. And
that's a long time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we started with a clothing brand, and then we moved to, doing TV and film, and then we moved to studying, hair care range and studying beauty salons. And then we went into the retail space where we opened convenience stores, like what you would know as a tuck shop, a spaza shop. Yeah. So we are in that space, and now we moved into a logistics business that, and then like a mobile wholesaler. And now we're going digital. Now we're taking our business online. We're creating online platforms but it's been consistently African accent. It's an expression of our African identity, and you see it in everything that we do. We see it in our space. We see it in who we work with, how we do things, and we just hope that we can inspire other people to do the same.
Yeah, I saw your post, and I noticed that you offer a tour. Now, visiting your store is on my bucket list. Honestly, I just don't know where it is.
Anytime.
Where is it?
We're based in Katlehong, in a place called Gati.
Oh, okay.
So it's a place that has got a rich history. And I always found that, even the culture of telling a story of where you're from is not there. Like there was, I once wanted to do like a tour of Katlehong just to get a sense. I grew up in the place, but I wanted to know the history, how it started and so on. And I found that there was no one doing that. So, that's how the Spaza Shop tours started, because the idea behind the Spaza Shop tours was to tell the story of the Spaza Shop and how, it was once the only means of survival for Black people in South Africa, and how, a lot of families thrived through this type of business and really took their kids to school. We created tycoons and moguls out of this thing. And a lot of people who come from, families that had spaza shops are the ones who kind of like, became entrepreneurs and have gone on to do big things. Right. So it was just about telling that story of, how Black entrepreneurship existed once upon a time, and it should be promoted in order to really create a self-sufficient communities. And it started. It was with an American friend of mine who said, "Hey, tell me more about a spaza shop." And as I was telling her the story, and she just found it interesting and said, "Look, can you take me around your neighborhood and just to get a sense of what you are talking about, especially in the context of Katlehong, because Katlehong has a history of violence, a long history of violence, where when the country was transitioning in 1994, there were, violent events in the area that kind of defined my childhood, where I used to jump over dead bodies as a 6-year-old. I used to come back from school and there would be gunshots, there would be bullets flying over my head. And when I talk to people about that, who live in South Africa, who I grew up with, those are experiences that some of them never had. So I realized that I really come from a really special place, this Katlehong, where, there was we literally experienced the civil war that everybody say we avoided as a country. So those were some of the stories that I was, telling some of the tourists that come on this tour. So, it started with a couple of friends, and I'll show them around, and I'll show them the history of the hostel. I'll show them where my family home was. I'll show them, how those wars impacted, my generation. A lot of my generation are into drugs and alcohol just because of the trauma that some of us went through, And I was just really trying to give context in terms of why we see things a certain way as as people of Katlehong.
I love that you're doing that. I'm sorry to interrupt, because I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I don't know much about our history. I try to watch a documentary there and there, and I pick up a few things, but that's different, as compared to learning it from somebody who has lived it. I think learning it from you, for example, would, make a greater impact, as opposed to, getting a few film directors to, put something together and stuff like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, and it helps that I'm a storyteller, so the fact that, I could put things in story form and put the context and really let you meet some of the people who lived through that time. That's pretty much what the tour is. So, we still host those, and people come out, and interestingly enough, it's a lot of international people and a lot of white people who come to the tours, because I think they value the idea of the history, the culture. I met one lady who used to be a UN, United Nations peacekeeping coordinator or something in the area during that time. So this lady came from, I think, Germany, and came to Katlehong as part of a UN peacekeeping mission. So she knew the history of the place. And she knew more about the place than some guests and some people in the area. She was telling stories about how, they would, come there and go into the hostels, and they would find guns, there'll be dead bodies and so on. So literally not enough of that history has been captured. So through the tours, that's kind of like what we're trying to do, preserve that history, tell it, and then really in the effort of saying, the more we talk about things like that and let people know what this freedom, that we all claim we have, what it took to really get this freedom, then we might not make the same mistakes. I think if more people knew about that history, the history of violence, then people wouldn't toy with the idea of being violent, Then maybe even the looting wouldn't even be happening, because, I know as that the whole feeling of anxiety and uncertainty and what's
fearing
next,
for your life, basically.
Fearing for. I know the feeling of what unrest do to a young person, to a child, to communities. So that's not something I wish for my community.